Good evening, sir. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this final session of this cybersecurity conference that we have been attending for last 2 days. And we now come to the final and the most significant session of this particular conference. As you are all aware, this is the session where we are going to have the India Foundation and ICT Cybersecurity Dialogue. This is basically a conversation between the cybersecurity leaders of the two countries. That is Lieutenant General Rajesh Pant, who is the National Cybersecurity Coordinator at Prime Minister's Office, Government of India, and Mr. Yigal Unna, Director General, Israel National Cyber Directorate. But before I hand it over to them, I'll just briefly give a short CV of the two speakers. General Pant serves as the National Cybersecurity Coordinator at PM's Office, Government of India. He has more than 42 years of experience in the Indian Army. In addition, General Pant is an internationally renowned scholar who has vast expertise in the field of electronic warfare, geointelligence, and cyber warfare. Mr. Yigal Unna serves as the Director General of the Israel National Cyber Directorate since 2018. In 1995, he was recruited by the Israel Security Agency, where he held a series of senior management positions. After 22 years of service within the Israel Security Agency, Mr. Unna joined the National Cyber Directorate, where he is tasked with setting up the National Cyber Bureau's Cyber Technology Unit, as well as leading it until his appointment as head of the Unified Directorate. In this particular session, I will request the two speakers to speak for about 15 to 20 minutes each, and then we will open it for Q&A comments. So, in keeping with the format, I'll first request General Rajesh Pant to speak for next 15 minutes or so, and then followed by Mr. Yigal Unna. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Captain Alok. If I'm audible, please raise your hand.
You are audible, sir.
Okay. So, greetings of the day to, hello, Yigal.
Hello. Hi.
Hello. You are in a more relaxed dress than I am, which is not fair. It's 9 p.m. here.
That's the way for us.
Yeah. So, greetings of the day to everyone, wherever you are, and thanks to India Foundation and the International Institute for Counter-Terrorism for having both of us here. Nice to see Yigal Unna, the DG of INCD. Last we met was, I think, in the virtual Global Cyber Cabinet during the Israeli Cyber Week. And the last we met physically was last year in the Israel Cyber Week. And we are all aware of the good work that he's doing and the challenges that he's facing 24/7 by 365. India also is one of the most attacked countries in the world, as you know. And let me start by talking of the changing nature of cyberspace. You see, unlike land, air, and sea, where these spaces are defined by land borders and territorial waters and even airspace. And I must share with the audience, because it's a very relaxed mood now, as to how I learned that airspace was also shared was last time when I was returning from Israel after the Israel Cyber Week. My flight to Delhi was at 10 p.m. in the night from Tel Aviv. And we had a series of meetings throughout the day. And when the flight took off, I called the air hostess and requested her for a drink. And she said, sorry, sir, you can't have a drink because we are flying over Saudi Arabia. The next drink will only be after 3 hours. So then I realized that even in the airspace, there is sovereignty. So what I'm trying to say is that cyberspace is one that is expanding on a daily basis. See, today there are 4.5 billion internet connected users, another 3 billion to go. 17 billion IoT devices. They say in the next 3 years, it's going to be 30 billion IoT. So the space is expanding. It is borderless. The attack surface is going to become much, much bigger. And for Yigal and me, it's going to become very, very serious. Because what I'm finding is that with the 5G rollout that is taking place, the M2M will start. The IoT devices will get connected, and the machine-to-machine communications will take place. So just imagine how expanded the attack surface will be. And when I talk of machine-to-machine, for me, an IoT device is basically a cyber-physical system. it has a sensor, it has a processor, it has an actuator, and it has a communicator. And if I'm able to hack this cyber physical system, then I can create a lot of problems from everything from a camera to a guided vehicle, a self-driven vehicle to an aircraft. So it's not an IT issue anymore. It's now with Industry 4.0, it's a OT issue also, and cyber physical systems also. So the first point I want to make is that the cyberspace is changing at a very rapid pace. Cyber physical systems are coming in, machine-to-machine communications are happening, and as if that was not enough, the pandemic has now created the work-from-home environment, the online environment, because of which the entire online data processing has gone up. And I can give you the example of our government National Informatics Center. We were handling about 20 million emails per day, and today we are handling about 80 million emails per day in the government sector. So it's a 3.5 to 4 times rise in the use of online by the government. And cybercrime, as you all know, has gone up by 500%, etc. So the cyberspace, the changing nature of cyberspace, both in terms of the attack surface as well as its details, are definitely worrying. Now, the recent case of FireEye company, also all of you are aware that these attackers are getting more and more smarter. They are always one step ahead. Let me assure you that the attackers are always one step ahead. And you see what they did in the FireEye case, in the recent case. They stole the tools from that company and then used it against the US government. And then there are cases, that in this particular case also, the malware became active after 2 weeks, right? So you have these obfuscation, malware and all these things. And in India recently, there's a news item that I read about, the other day about 7 crore details being on the web, sold on the web, and Haldiram's getting attacked and Dr. Reddy getting attacked. So just give me a tactical pause here because 2 of my dogs have just entered the room. So let me hand over back to Yigal and I'll come back to you. Thank you. I'm just switching on.
Yes. Well,
Yigal. I'll request Mr. Yigal Unna to make his comments now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, General Pant, and both Professor Ganor and all the rest of friends, old friends and new friends I see in the screenshots. Well, I'm totally agree with what General Pant just mentioned, and I will elaborate on that because I'll begin with quoting a journalist, one major journalist of the Israeli press that called me yesterday in the middle of the Hanukkah holiday that we are now having here. We are not feeling any holiday atmosphere here in this, at least in the Cyber Directorate. And he told me that, quote, we feel here in the editorial floor that we're in the middle of World War III regarding cyber. And that is because of a series of news about the Israeli insurance company that was hit 2 weeks ago and still ongoing leaking of personal details. And then on the last weekend, we have a big issue about supply chain to all the customs and import-export IT companies that the supply chain that give them the software was hit, not yet damage, but we managed to detect it in advance, but it leaked to the news and a lot of fuss. And then the Google thing, which is probably a malfunction and not a cyber attack globally, happened. And then the SolarWinds and the FireEye, etc., and the psychological impact. And that's what we are gathered to talk about, the terror, what is the actual impact on this news, on this series of different pieces unrelated completely, but the aggregated impact is something that people fear to open the computers. And I get from my family and from friends and from my boss, the Prime Minister of Israel and others, is it safe to work? Yes, it is safe to work, but get used to the new era, as General Pant mentioned. We are all connected. It's going to get even better on the opportunity side, on the bright side of digitalization and modernization. I came back last week from Dubai, and they hosted me there. They showed me the Dubai police, took me to an autonomous police station. They call it SPS. It's completely without human beings located there. They have 11 like this all spread around Dubai, and you can enter as a civilian and get all the services that a modern police can give without speaking to a human being, just with a digital and sophisticated AI measures and others. And that's how our, not future, this is how present looks like, and the future is going to look even more. Now, the such of mankind and such of a new phase of human beings is just asking for the dark side to come over and to try to interfere, to do whatever bad people, the 2% or whatever Professor Ganol can tell exactly that of people with bad means want to do. Now they have much more opportunity. They don't need to be physically where they want or need. They can do it remotely, anonymously, behind proxies, much more and more than ever before in history of mankind. And my mission was to relax and comfort and to put the adrenaline down to this specific journalist with the Third World War, God forbid, what happened, and to make sure that we manage also, if not more than others, the psychological aspect of the new era of digitalization that have also the dark side, the abuse, this kind of attacks that we're gonna face more before it will get to a level that we can live with that. We still can live with that, but the impact and the noise is too loud, and we need to do more to minimize the impact, not just on the actual damage of leaking information, of causing malfunctions or disruptions to the continuous of the critical processes, but also, and if not more than others, to the psychological and understanding impact. That's where we stand now in the middle of too many crises all around.
So let me just take off from where Yigal ended on the Third World War that he mentioned. I'm sure there are more good people in the world than the evil ones. And with that philosophy, if you recall, in all our global cyber cabinets, whether it was with your organization or in the recent Singapore Cyber Week or in the Prague conference, I have always been insisting that cybersecurity is an international team sport. And if we have to beat the criminals, then we have to understand that we have to collaborate with like-minded democratic countries, if I may add that, in order to find the attribution. So in all the meetings, I have been stressing on attribution because the criminals, as you're aware, are coming through a couple of hops. If you come to Delhi, and I'll take you to our National Informatics Center, where we have a huge security operations center with a global map, and 40% of the attacks you find are coming from the US. And the reason you and I know is because the last IP which is being shown is basically an Amazon web server virtual machine that has been hired. That is the last of those 4 or 5 hops. So, they come from countries where they know that privacy is respected. That is where the democracies come in. Because in the US, if you recall, even when that Boston Marathon case took place, the iPhone people did not reveal the details. I mean, they had to come to you for help. And of course, this is unofficial. But the point is that democratic countries lay a lot of stress on privacy. So they take advantage of that, hire the machines there, and then come from there. So in order to beat them, the MLAT, the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty, does not seem to be working. The letter of rogatory, the judicial process, does not seem to be working. So we have to find a solution. And you and I are also aware that in the UNGGE, the 11 norms, non-binding norms that we had created after 10 to 15 years of hard work and come to some sort of understanding, even that is not being respected because the 5th UNGGE, as you know, could not come to a consensus. And the 6th UNGGE, again, we are finding the East and the Western lobbies are active. And as if that was not enough, the Chinese have now applied for the new IP. So I'm sure the participants of this webinar would be aware that the Chinese have applied for a new internet protocol to the International Telecommunications Union, that is the UN body, ITU, and that is a decentralized sort of a structure that they are proposing, and they have backed it up with what is called the GIDS, the Global Initiative on Data Security, and also come out with some data protection laws. So the situation is now getting serious, and this is what is being referred to as the splinter net. And if that happens, then attribution will, I can assure you, become more difficult, besides the other things. I'm not talking of global trade, I'm not talking of education, research and development, trade, social media, all that will get affected. But attribution will become more difficult because between the two nets, there will definitely be some points of interconnect. And the hackers will come through these points of interconnect. You and I will not be able to find out. And then they will, it's like two worlds, and this army is coming or the special squad is coming, attacking, and then going back, and then they disappear. So this is another serious issue. The lack of international collaboration, the lack of problems in attribution, and the future, which I hope it doesn't happen because I don't like this word deglobalization. But then there are very strong indicators of it happening, the way things are taking place. So this is one of the things that at the G2G level and in the discussions that I have with my friends like Yigal, Unna, we always keep discussing as to what are the solutions that we can do for the attribution part. Finally, there has to be a whole of nation approach as far as the nation is concerned to tackle cybersecurity. It has to be a whole of nation approach. Everyone is responsible for the cybersecurity of the nation, because that's the way the attacks come. They send a mail to just one person. Human being is the weakest link, and from there there's a lateral spread and escalation of privileges, and then they get those rights, and then they strike at the right moment. So individual has a responsibility, government has a responsibility, academia has a responsibility, R&D has a responsibility, business has a responsibility. All of us are responsible at different levels and at different scale to ensure cybersecurity of the nation. So, of course, our strategy is coming out very soon, but this is, we have to think of some proactive actions. And this is where we look forward to our friends from Israel, because they have the cutting edge of technology in cybersecurity, and I've seen some of it. So that is, the sort of cooperation that we look forward. And I now await comments of Yigal and Alok Bansal on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Yigal, would you like to respond to some of these questions, comments which he has made?
Yes, shortly. General Pant and me, we as he mentioned, we share a lot of discussions with like-minded in the close circles. And one thing is imminent and very clear, that no one, not a single agency, not inside Israel, which is much, much smaller than big India, and not even one agency in India, and not one country, not a single country, can really deal with this new plague, new pandemic by itself. We must, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have of partnerships and working together from all levels, from beginning with sharing information on the basic TTPs and IOCs and all the technical raw data that need to be shared in order to face the same attacks that behave pandemically. So it's hitting here in India probably at the same time or very short time elements, but also with the counter attacks and deterrence and pushing back the attackers, as mentioned. Now, the UN and the traditional diplomacy, and as you may suspect, I'm not a professional diplomat and not related to this, but I work a lot of years with the diplomacy. The traditional tools are unfortunately less efficient, if at all, in this case, because of basically, as General Pant mentioned, the attribution issues, the deniability of the attackers, the proxies and curtains behind curtains that the perpetrators can hide behind. And so there's the GGE, there's the open-ended, now called never-ended working group in the UN. Now they postponed it for another 5 years, if I'm not mistaken, General Pant. It's a process on behalf of the process, not really to get into real results and tangible practical measures. So we began in the Global Cyber Cabinet and bilaterally between the like-minded countries to discuss on more practical measures to build, to make higher walls and fences and push back the too easy to perpetrate attacks today. You can really go and unlike in the drug dealing money, that you cannot enter a bank in a like-minded, normal, modern country with a suitcase full of dollar bills and just open an account and say, okay, put it on the account under John Smith and that's okay. No, there's a know your client processes, questions are asked, and more transparency is needed too. It's not complete, it's not hermetic, but it's much more difficult. We want to adopt that to the cyber security, meaning that you cannot buy a virtual machine or hosting services or servers in a third-party country to perpetrate your attack without any question asked, forms to be filled, something that will make the life of at least the common perpetrator much harder and push back and make the attacker's life more difficult and less easy to run and run pandemic attacks. We need to take systems like the CyberNet. We have in Israel a closed circuit, more than 2,000 entities, government, public, private sector entities that connected 24/7 to a very high secured system that we run. Very simple, by the way. It's a Facebook for cybersecurity that we can immediately share. And by the way, in the recent events that we now face in the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks, it proven to be #1 tool to cybersecure Israel, because we find the details, the IOCs, the specifics of the attacks very shortly after we have the first signs. And we can push it to 2,000 CISOs and cybersecurity officers all around Israel, major entities, in a split second, and get results and get hits or get enrichment of this raw data, and immediately see where we have more hits and more targets. That's how we found the Amital, the customs services agency that was hit as a supply chain to more than 80 other entities very easily, very shortly, before the perpetrators manage to attack. Now we need to adopt that to larger global scale, bilateral, multilateral between countries, and that's how simple it is to really improve our life, just sharing, just with partnership, just with removing the traditional obstacles of protocols and how to share intelligence. It's not the traditional intelligence. It's not the usual classified intelligence. Sometimes it is, but most of it's unclassified, that can be easily transferred and broadcast to wider parties and vice versa. Now, today we're not just in good, excellent relations with India and the India CERT, but we also with the other 89 countries, more than 89 countries. Recently, we lift the curtain with our relations with the Gulf, with the UAE and Bahrain, and now with the others along the way. But we work with everyone that share the same problem, and in fact, we all share the same problems, not from just state-sponsored, but from more and more radical groups, cybercrime that develop more greed, not just for money, but for influence. And now I'll give that example just to summarize. The attack on the insurance company in Israel is not a first of kind, but a very loud example of something that happens more and more since the COVID-19 erupted. Now, cybercrime groups that basically just they're there for the money. Yes, they want to launch ransomware just to get the money of the big entities, sometimes unfortunately for even poor entities, and to squeeze their money. What they've done in the insurance company case is not just ransomware and we get your data, your personal data of your customers, give us money, otherwise we'll out it and leak it to the public, but they enjoyed of the malicious and vicious side of it, because we understood very, very fast that they are not just for the money, because we offered them money. The company offered them money, and they still leaked the information. They still enjoyed of making the malicious fun of, hey, look, we can make life of many people miserable. And that's the mixture between the financial motivation and the malicious, vicious, maybe state-sponsored, but probably not, just to harm, to make damage, is something that I fear that we're going to see more, because it is there. It's possible. They can do both and get public. Now everyone knows their name, pay to key. Yes, who knew about them 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago? So this is the basic sentiments and motivation of human beings, and unfortunately now it transferred to much more dangerous, hazardous environment of digital, of the internet, and that's where we need to run faster than them as governments, as normal like-minded societies, and to get together and push them back. This is the critical, the money time.
Before I open the forum for questions, those wishing to ask questions may raise hands or type them on the chat box. I have a question for both of you, which is a very simple question. With artificial intelligence, big data, cognitive networks coming into the play, has the problem of cybersecurity increased, or has it become easier? Because these help you to solve the problems. At the same time, it also helps hackers and those intending to attack you, make it more difficult. So I'll request General Pant and then Mr. Unna to kindly respond to this query.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's very futuristic also. In my view, it has more benefit than disadvantages, the use of AI and big data. And why I'm saying is because a lot of behavioral analytics is today being utilized. For example, in the work from home environment, one of the biggest issues is identity and access management, because now it's a distributed sort of enterprise and people are working from different locations. So how do I confirm whether that person is actually whom he is and the application that he's using. So this is where AI is giving us a lot of benefits, that considering his previous behavior, what is called as passive biometrics, etc. So that is one aspect. As far as big data is concerned, again, when you talk of organizations like a national malware repository, for example, where today a lot of data is being received, and millions, over 100 million odd samples and artifacts. So then extracting the genetic codes and trying to find out, as Yigal says, the TTP of the attackers, that is again where big data analytics helps. So in my view, I think both AI and big data are giving us more benefits from the cybersecurity point of view than giving it to the attacker. Although the flip side is that he's also using AI tools to fool us, etc. But then I'm just giving you both sides of it, and which is since you asked, which is better, then in my view, their contribution to cybersecurity is more. Thank you.
Over to you, Mr. Unna.
Yes. Well, still the human element is and will remain the main problem in cybersecurity. We're doing the mistakes. We're doing the pushing the links that we shouldn't push or press. We're choosing passwords that are too easy to guess. The problem that AI is a great tool to push or imitate the human behavior on steroids. So if I need to check for vulnerabilities, it will take me much longer to do it today in traditional technology, when if I take AI and harness it, it will take sometimes something that takes weeks can take seconds. And AI can open more and more fields of imitating or understanding or replacing human behavior. And that is very dangerous when you're talking about cybersecurity. Now, we do harness the AI also for the good side of cybersecurity. Finding the vulnerabilities very fast is also works for the good guys, to find the holes and the cracks and to close it. But I'm too old in the business, more than 30 years, to have the realistic approach that any new technology is first or faster abused than used. So I'm afraid that we're going to see the abuse of AI and harnessing for bad motivation before we're going to see and enjoy the benefits. But here I turn it to Professor Ganor, because I think that the academia and the IDC should, and I guess they already began on looking deeper into all the aspects of the full aspects, not just the cybersecurity, but all aspects of AI and the dark side of it in all matters of what we call terror and abuse and bad means.
Thank you. I think we had the benefit of hearing Professor Ganor in first session, but I'll still request if you'd like to make an intervention and say something on this particular issue.
Thank you, Alok. I appreciate that. First of all, I would like to thank General Pant and, of course, my friend Yigal Unna for taking the time and share with us their thoughts. My understanding from those two brilliant presentations is that, like in counterterrorism, there is a need to move from the individual efforts of every state or even bilateral cooperation to a multilateral cooperation under the title that it takes a network to beat a network. But Yigal, you actually referred to what ICT is doing, and it's interesting to see that today, actually, we held at ICT a very interesting red team exercise in which we played the role of ISIS leadership sitting together and trying to see how can we use, as ISIS leadership, the AI, especially in reference to deep fake capabilities, and how can we extend our impact globally as ISIS by using deep fake together with kinetic and cyber activity. We are in the midst of doing that, but even the first day of this red team opened my eyes about the future possibilities of the new brand of terrorists getting deeper into the field of AI and using the platform of cyber activity. I think that what you have mentioned, Yigal, the fact that Israel has faced this attack last week, and maybe first time we saw adversaries that was not just interested in the profit, but actually was interested also in humiliating the Israeli authorities, in embarrassing the Israeli authorities. That would be much more common when we will see more terrorist organization using this platform in the future, and that's what I believe is going to happen. And I'm so happy that we had this ability to work together with the India Foundation on that important gathering, and to finalize that with these two brilliant presentations, which I believe is only the beginning of further cooperation between our two institutes on that matter.
Thank you, Professor Ganor. We have two raised hands, so I'll request those who wish to ask questions. Firstly, Apurv Mishra, please ask your question.
Thank you, sir. My name is Apurv Mishra. I'm a senior research fellow at India Foundation. Thank you, Lieutenant General Pant and Mr. Unna, for two wonderful presentations. I have two questions, and both of them are based on two phrases that Lieutenant General Pant used in his remarks. And I'm hoping both Mr. Unna and Lieutenant General Pant can respond to them. The first question is related to the phrase you used that cybersecurity has to be a global team sport. And I want to bring you to the case of the WannaCry attack that happened some years back. Public reports indicate that it happened from North Korean hackers. But the interesting thing is that the most sophisticated part of that code was actually written by the NSA of the United States government to penetrate Windows systems. And the North Koreans simply weaponized the code that the Americans had written. So do you think that as a global community, we need to think about a digital non-proliferation treaty, which puts a limit on the kinds of cyber weapons that countries can develop, just as you have a non-proliferation treaty for the nuclear sphere? The second question I have again relates to a phrase that you used, Lieutenant General Pant, and this is the idea of a deglobalizing world. Just some years back, Russia tested its own offline internet. They call it the RUNET, but it's actually a domestic version of the internet that they want to sort of implement for their entire country. Currently, only authoritarian countries like China and some countries like Russia are experimenting with these offline versions of the internet. Do you think that this is going to be the future of the cyber world in the decades to come, and is it desirable? And if no, then what can free societies like India and Israel do to prevent countries from developing their own domestic versions of the internet? Thank you.
So you could take on both, maybe first General Pant and then maybe Mr. Unna.
Okay, thank you, Apurv. I think both questions are absolutely great. And one thing I've learned is not to use phrases, because you said you used both of my phrases and asked the question. So, excuse me. As far as, the WannaCry and its use by the NSA is concerned, we have also been pitching for a digital United Nations, actually, in some forum. India has always adopted a multi-stakeholder approach, preferably UN-led. So that is what we are pitching, although it is becoming difficult to achieve with what we are seeing in the United Nations, which is why regional cooperations are coming up, like the Budapest Convention and some other corporations are coming up as far as the cybercrime is concerned. But there is definitely a need, and that is what the UNGG norms, if you see those 11 norms, you will find some of them have a similar language to what you're saying, that countries should not use their cyberspace for launching attacks, and there should be responsible ICT behavior, etc. So all those had basically given the same sort of idea, but definitely the need is there. But what I said earlier about the splinter net, etc., and which is what is leading to the second question. Now, as far as the .ru that was practiced by Russia, I would say that it is a case of contingency planning. That in case the internet pipes are cut, let's say there's a fault in the submarine cable, for example. It may not be a deliberate fault, but in case that happens, then the entire business which is run on the internet, if you study the architecture of the internet, there are root servers and there are root instances. So a lot of the copying of the data takes place. So for about a week or so, we can handle it in India if the pipes are cut. But what happens after that? So there is a architecture methodology where actually you crudely saying, you twist the pipes back from inside and then have some more instances and backup and stuff like that. I think there's no harm in countries practicing that as a contingency measure. Of course, China is a different story altogether because everything is behind a firewall, etc. But what the Russians did, and in fact, let me share with you, even we are seriously thinking of conducting some sort of exercise that in case something happens at our internet gateways, then how do we continue to function? So there is no deglobalization in that. I would say it is more of contingency planning.
Mr. Unna, please.
Yes, thanks. Two very good questions. First, if we talk about WannaCry, one thing that is still not clear enough to the public and not even to decision makers is the new nature, or the nature of the new weapon that is called cybersecurity. Cyber weapon is letters and numbers. It's a language, human understood language, that is a code that can cause really a disastrous damage. Now, if we take a look at the human history, we had spears and arrows, very simple weapons that cause very simple damage. At the end, very minimized. Then we had the utmost weapon, nuclear weapon, that can cause a devastating damage, but is very hard to get and to develop, and very few countries are, at least publicly, say they achieve that. And then you have cyber weapons. Cyber weapons are very easy. Again, letters and numbers. Writing a code, that is the weapon. But it can cause the damage of a nuclear weapon, and even more. This anomaly is something that is still, the mankind is still struggling with. It's not understood to the deepest elements of that. And a WannaCry attack is a great example. What happened there, attributed to by press and others, it's NSA probably develop a weapon, the good guys, a good weapon to collect intelligence from the bad guys. And because it's at the end letters and numbers, it's too easy to first, when the bad guys are attacked, they can retrieve it and turn it to the against who launched it against them. That is impossible to do with kinetic missiles and others. Or it leaks, what probably happened in the WannaCry case. It leaks because it's too easy to leak. On small micro SD card, you can leak almost all the weaponry of Israel, US, and India together. And this anomaly is something that we need to adapt or build a new paradigm how to deal with, because this is the new age. Youngsters, kids can, in the age of 12 or 13, can develop it and run it and cause a damage that platoons or battalions of high-skilled combatants cannot do with the traditional weapons. And it's a shift of paradigms and something that we're still struggling to understand it ourselves and to explain it to decision makers. Regarding the isolated internet islands, it's very easy, it won't work. The whole concept of the internet, of connectivity is about connectivity. Now, you can build firewalls, you can do countermeasures that can make sure, or try to make sure, that only the right bits and bytes can walk through. But once you isolate yourself, like North Korea, you remain behind. You'll be retarded and less developed and way behind all the others, because the global elements, the mankind is now all about digitalization, which basically means how we flatten the world and make all the data, all the what we need to know, understand, and to entertain and to trade. Everything is around this network with 0 and 1s. Once you isolate yourself, you're out of the game, you will be extinct. So therefore the answer is, it's not a good idea, not even in our crisis management programs. We used to have in recent years the red button that disconnect everything from everywhere. We say it's causing more damage than the actual attack. So we removed it, these red buttons. No sense in doing that. You need to do other measures of minimizing the attack surface, of doing other things. But if you disconnect yourself, it's like saving your own life in a heart attack by choking yourself. It's not a good idea, and I strongly recommend to leave it to less developed countries or societies and remain on how to make yourself more safe in a connected world.
Thank you. We have 3 more questions. I'll request Kedar Kulkarni to ask his question.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Thank you, the panelists, eminent panelists. My question, first of all, I'd like to thank Apurva. I had a similar question, but I'll carry forward from the point of deep fakes and the disinformation campaign, which is the new hybrid warfare technique which we're talking about. Now, AI is making it very difficult to distinguish between what is real and unreal. So how is the state tackling this issue of these massive disinformation campaign using deepfakes? And what should be the response of common citizens, and how do common citizens identify such very difficult deepfake news or articles which are floating, or videos which are? Thank you.
With your permission, we'll take 1 more question, and then Ayushi Ketkar.
Thank you, sir. As mentioned by Pant, I would like to know the response of both the speakers, because you hold very high positions, and you know that one of the biggest challenges that we face now is between data sovereignty and privacy. These seem to be 2 irreconcilable ends. How do free societies like India and Israel deal with this challenge? Kindly share your experience in this regard. Thank you.
Request both these answers from you, Mr. Unna, first, and then General Pant, please.
Well, how many days do we have to the seminar? It's a pretty wide questions, but I'll try to summarize it. Regarding deepfake and disinformation, well, first of all, we must say it's not completely cyber. When we talk about cybersecurity and my jurisdiction, only if the generator or the what caused the disinformation is hacking into a system or gaining unauthorized access is something that is under my jurisdiction. Otherwise, if you just, you know, botnets in the Facebook or other places that are legitimately or semi-legitimately are bought and used, it's not really cyber. And this is one problem. Countries, at least Israel, maybe India is in a different place, General Pant will relate to that, but Israel is still struggling. What is the right alignment on the government, law enforcement and other agencies side, how to tackle that. Because we don't want in a democratic society to be judges of a content. We don't want to be the one that say, okay, this content is legitimate and the other content is not. So what is fake? What is a deep fake and others? So we stick to more clear methodologies of identifying where there's a manipulation, a technological manipulation in streaming, in video, in others, and their AI is really a great blessing of how to identify and how to detect the early signs of this kind of technology manipulation. But if it's not a technology manipulation, then we won't know. I suspect there's no other agency that could know about that. So that's a big thing, and the answer is education. More skepticism, more criticism by press and media consumers, which is all of us, to what we are, what they push and put on us on the press, on the media, on the television, and that's really a struggling and maybe the most important disease in the 21st century that we need to deal. And I don't need to elaborate on what's happening on with our big friend in America regarding that. What is true, what is false, and now we're entering the vaccines, the COVID-19 vaccines era, and we're full of fake here in Israel also. In fact, we inaugurated a government sub-unit in the healthcare agency that deals only with counter-fake publications regarding the vaccines. And that's crazy. Imagine that year ago, 2 years ago. And we're going to struggle with that a lot. About data sovereignty, we're really something that I ask Professor Gano, maybe they can elaborate or do more academic research on that, because we have ideas, we have a multi-agency committee that we deal with the aspects of that. In fact, we had last week, we had an international conference that the Ministry of Justice represented our view. Basically, we think that data is something that should be regarded as entity, as almost as a physical element, like other physical elements that need to be taken care of in all aspects, even on war legal atmosphere or legal boundaries. That's basically what we're struggling. But we have debates, and it's a good debates, because data and data sovereignty is the new sovereignty, and we all need to take care of that in the coming years, if not months.
Yeah, let me start with Ayushi's question on data sovereignty, since Yigal was talking of that, just to provide the continuity. In India, this whole debate of the Personal Data Protection Bill, which is presently being discussed in Parliament, etc., started off with the aspect of privacy, where about 2 years back, there was a Supreme Court decision that under Article 21 of the Constitution, privacy is a fundamental right. So once that was declared, then we came on to the aspect of sensitive and personal data and how it is to be protected. And based on that, there was a Justice Sri Krishna Committee report, and then we made our draft, and that is a bill that is presently being discussed in Parliament. So data sovereignty and our bill is mostly aligned to the GDPR of Europe. All of you must be aware of the GDPR, which was introduced on 25th of May 2018 in Europe. And over there you find that it has led to a lot of success, because earlier the companies were not reporting the breaches of data. Now in GDPR, within 72 hours you have to report, otherwise 20,000 euros or 4% of your revenue. So this is what we need in India to protect our personal data. Of course, there are issues about cross-border free flow, etc., which are being discussed. But all this, where have we learned this from? We've learned this from GDPR. We've learned this from the US. You are aware that the leak of 81 million accounts of Facebook to Cambridge Analytica, Facebook was fined $5 billion and they have paid also. Their annual revenue is 107 billion. He's paid 5 billion to the Federal Trade Commission of the US. So in India, yesterday, you all have read 7 crore Indians' card data is being sold on the dark web, etc. And so many other cases are coming out. That means, in a sense, we are losing. The government is losing money because of the loss of data. The individuals are losing money. So this is the protection that we want to provide to the public. And that is as far as the data sovereignty and the privacy is concerned. As far as the deep fake and disinformation is concerned, it's a current problem in social media, and the answer lies in using technology. For example, a lot of multi-factor authentication techniques have come out recently. I mentioned this earlier also as to how it is being ensured about the identity of the person, both based on location, based on his behavior analytics, etc. Facebook, for example, has started a blue dot sort of a concept. So certain key individuals, their tweets always come with a blue dot. They cannot be copied, etc. Even Twitter is thinking of something like that. So we will have to find an answer. As I said, it's a battle of wits going on. It's a race. I think, as Yigal Unna was saying, there are not too many days left in the seminar. Only 2 minutes are left. So I will hand it over back to Captain Bansal.
We have 5 minutes left. I'll just take one last question, which Wing Commander Sudhakaran has been wanting to ask for a long time. I'll just ask him to quickly ask his question, brief question, to the point.
Sir, good evening, sir. This is a question to Lieutenant General Pant. The question is with respect to SpaceX program on the Starlink constellation, wherein they are likely to deliver high-link internet right now to North America and Canada, but then eventually the plan is to provide it throughout the world. Now, this has got far-reaching security consequence as well as economic consequence, because the ground traffic from which there is a lot of economic activities that are dependent on, and the data security as well as the control of government in data traffic management. All this have far-reaching consequence for a system like this. So what is the plan of the government to protect itself from such a situation?
Thank you.
Yeah, Sudhakar, you've raised a very specific issue, and I will request if you can send a mail to me. My email ID is ncsc@gov.in. Just send the details of this case to me. But having said that, let me also say that in any system, we cannot have 100% check on all the equipment. So generally, it's basically risk analysis that we are doing. So I will have to see in this particular system that you're talking of, which are the places where we have to have our roots of trust, where the data is actually being stored, or the critical data, and that definitely there can be no compromise on that. That I assure you, and you'll hear something in weeks to come about what else we are doing in the government. But please send the details of this particular Starlink case to me at ncsc@gov.in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think this session has been extremely fascinating, and I would like to thank both our eminent speakers for taking time out from their busy schedule to give us this one full hour where we could interact with them. We are really grateful to you. And with this session, this wonderful conference, which we have organized over a period of last 2 days, comes to an end. And I'd like to thank ICT Herzliya for actually collaborating with us. And as we said, this is the beginning. We have a huge round of series of events that we plan to host with ICT Herzliya. We have actually a collaboration which goes back a number of years, and we want to firm up this collaboration in days to come. And for that, I'm really grateful to Professor Bose Ganor, founder and executive director of ICT Herzliya, to my friend Stevie Wenberg, the deputy executive director, Daphne Berry. And as far as India Foundation is concerned, we are really grateful to Mr. Ram Madhav, who has been the founder of India Foundation as a member of Board of Governors and who attended this conference, of course, and my colleague, Senior Research Fellow Soumya Chaturvedi for making this conference a great success. I am above all grateful to all the speakers who took out time out to speak on such specialized subjects, and all the participants who took time out and stayed awake till late nights or got up early in Israel to log in for this conference. We are really grateful to all of you. Thank you so much. And I hope we have future events coming up where we collaborate more frequently. And thank you very much, sir. Once again, I thank all of you for taking time out and being with us. Thank you so much. Really grateful to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
General
very
Pant,
much.
Professor
Shalom.
Ganor.
Shalom.
Shalom,
Namaskar.
shalom. Bye bye. Bye. Come to India soon.
I hope so. Thank you.
Thanks, Definite. Thanks, Stevie. Thanks, Soumya.
Thank
Steve.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Alok. Thank you, Yigal. Good to see you.
Steve, תודה חבר'ה.
תודה רבה.